Welcome to the Jets UK podcast. I'm one of your hosts, Andres Groves. I'm joined by my co-host, David Wyatt-Hupton. David, how are you doing in this quiet period of the off-season?
Yeah, I mean, it's quiet, isn't it? It's kind of, there's not much to really get excited about apart from the odd OTA video that pops up from the Jets feed or Woody Johnson's intern. So Knicks have been eliminated from the playoffs as well, so sport's running a bit dry.
Well, you know, the rest of the players now we can root for the Bucks, right? Is it the Bucks that are facing the Hawks now? Is it? Am I right saying that?
I think it's Philadelphia facing the Hawks.
It's Philadelphia. That's it.
Got the Nets,
that's right. That's right. They got the Nets. Yeah. So yeah, we can root for the Philadelphia 76ers to bury Trae Young and the Hawks a bit. We don't want to talk about the Knicks anyway. We'll leave that for the next podcast. I'm sure you'll probably set one up with those soon. They look pretty good. And I think it's a good model for the Jets, right? To kind of see how you kind of put some good pieces in and build towards success. And hopefully there's a building step for the Knicks, and the Jets can follow kind of suit in terms of putting together a competitive team and then building off that and then becoming more better as you go on. So. Yeah,
and a quick turnaround as well. That's what I want to see, because obviously last year they were awful. Expected to be awful again this year. Kind of similar to what the media's portraying the Jets as at the minute. So hopefully the Jets have as big a turnaround, and we've got a playoff game to look forward to at the end of this year.
That would be amazing. I mean, we're not getting the rating. When you see all these ratings come through, and it was like, oh yeah, the Jets did such a good job at the draft. And it's like, okay, now we do our rankings, and it's like they're just burying the Jets in every position, and it's unproven, right? It's because nothing's proven. You're coming off a 2-14 season, you have to accept it. But I think some of the rankings, I'm thinking, and I think we're all thinking that 28th position, that PFF ranked us on the wide receivers. Yeah, it's gonna be higher than that for sure. But we'll see how high. We're gonna have to have people healthy. We're having a little bit of an injury. Some injuries there in the wide receiver unit, with Denzel Mims, stepping away. Obviously, Corey Davis had the shoulder strain, so hopefully it's not too serious. They get back and start getting on the same page with Zach Wilson, who's looking pretty good in training camp, getting good reports from the beat.
Yeah, he's definitely getting very good reports. You read their timeline, it's kind of touchdown. And I think the one interception bounced off someone's hands. I can't remember who it was, but
it was Vincent Smith. Vincent Smith bobbled it.
So how many times is he going to realistically be thrown to Vincent Smith this year? Probably not a lot.
I mean, that's
probably less now.
Probably less now. Yeah, exactly. That's it's probably one of the these are the beginnings of like how someone torpedoes themselves. There's a lot of depth right there, especially if you look at that sixth position. I mean, when you get past the top five we talked about, then you look people like Braxton Berrios is probably going to have a spot. They're going to carry 7 then. Then who else is that position? So there's a lot of that sixth position is quite interesting in terms of who will take it. And yeah, Vincent Smith not helping himself at all. Had another fumble as well on the same day. So
he had a pretty rough practice, didn't he?
Yeah, rough day.
Lawrence Cage is another guy that's probably fighting for that, and Josh Malone's in there as well probably. So.
Well, that's a position.
Yeah, he's not helping himself. Let's just say he hasn't helped himself with that practice.
No, absolutely. I mean,
but early days, obviously.
There is early days, and this is obviously a position battle, and it kind of leads us on to what was all about this show. On today's show, we're going to open up our position battle rankings for like kind of the spots on the team where we think there could be a battle for the position, whether it be a starter or a certain roster spot. We won't be starting with receiver. I think we'll get to that as things go on. But today we'll be talking about right guard, the infamous right guard position that we always harp on about, the leaky hole in our offensive line. We'll also be taking your questions later on. But first we'll jump into a little bit of news. Okay, so for the news this week, we've had a little bit. We had a signing and we had a visit, which we're talking about. And yeah, with the signing, we had Ronald Blair, the defensive end from the 49ers, formerly the 49ers, and a former Salah favorite came in, and we brought him in. David, what does he bring to the Jets and to that defensive line, which is already pretty stacked?
Yeah, I mean, what a collection of defensive linemen we're putting together. It's going to be quite fun seeing how they rotate everyone, and it's going to be interesting to see how many they carry as well. going into next season. But I think Ronald Blair is kind of your classic kind of outside edge rusher. I think that's why I was looking at where he lined up with San Francisco, and it was pretty much almost exclusively outside tackle. So
Mm.
he's not kind of an inside player; he is an outside pass rusher. Um, the issue with Blair, though, obviously, is his injury history, isn't it? I think San Francisco, by the sounds of it, they wanted to bring him back. They released him in March, but apparently he was close to re-signing in April. They had real legitimate interest in bringing him back on a lower deal. Um, but he decided he needed a fresh start, come over to obviously New York with a familiar face in Salah. Um, so yeah, it's going to be interesting to see if he can, one, make the team, two, crack the rotation, and three, what he can do when he's actually healthy, because he has had a couple of healthy seasons. And back in 2018, he had five and a half sacks in 16 games when he was healthy, 33 tackles. So he has talent. He was a pretty well regarded guy at Appalachian State. I think he had 7.5 sacks his final year. So I'm interested. It's a low risk, high reward signing, isn't it? So
Yeah.
I don't think it's not going to break the bank for us. So let's see what he's got. See how that ACL's recovered, because he didn't play any football in 2020. So he hasn't, kind of CJ Mosley. He's played more recently than CJ has, but he is coming off that ACL tear that he did. I think middle of 2019 he did that, and he hasn't played since. So it might be a tough ask for him to crack this defensive line, which is probably our deepest position on the team, isn't it?
It is, and I think what he offers from the looks of it, when you're looking at the stats and his kind of his run, playing against the run versus playing versus the pass, he looks like he's more dominant in the run, stopping the run game, which is good actually for somebody. It's actually a lot of actually fun enough for all the kind of issues with guys that we used to do stopping the run weren't very good pass rushers. We actually now flipped it now, where we've got a bunch of pass rushers who maybe their weaknesses is slightly more towards the run. So he can give us some depth as kind of in terms of run stopping a bit, and maybe a guy who could play on the other side of Carl Lawson as well. So yeah, it's interesting signing and more depth, more quality, and another guy who Salah and the staff know quite well. So yeah, it's pretty a solid signing for June. Another guy who'd be interesting to come in and would be even more than solid signing if he was to sign would be Morgan Moses, the right tackle or the tackle, but mostly played right tackle with the Washington football team. He came to visit last week. He's gone to see some other teams as well, the Bears. They said there's also some other teams that you may go see as well. But yeah, he came to the Jets. And David, what do you think of this one?
Yeah, Morgan Moses is quite an interesting one, because he's a very big guy. I mean, he's 330 plus pounds. So
he's like 6'6" as well, right? Yeah.
Yeah, he's 6'6". He's he has a little bit of athleticism, but I just wonder how suited he is for this position. I imagine he is, otherwise they wouldn't have bothered bringing him in. But 2020 was by far his best season. So what you don't want to do is buy too high either. Obviously, Washington released him because they brought in Sam Cosmi, and they had other players that could fill in straight away. But even in 2020, he still allowed 5 sacks and 38 pressures. So, I mean, I think his rating, if you look at his PFF rating, it's a lot higher than the stats would indicate it should be, which is quite interesting. Mm-hmm. So, I quite like George Fant. He's not amazing, but I think he'll do quite well in this system. I think his move blocking is very good. So I think he will be better in LaFleur's kind of outside zone system. So, Moses is interesting, but 2020 was by far his best season. You go back to 2019. I mean, he allows 5 sacks every year. This is something that I kind of noticed. He allowed 5 sacks every year going back to something like 2016. So it seems like he's never allowed 4 or 6. He allows 5 on the dot every single year.
So if he gets to the last game and he's going to let one, then don't play him, because he'll have he'll let 4 sacks against Zach.
Just do not bother playing him. But he's kind of, I think some Jets fans are building him up to be better than he is. I do think he's decent, but I don't think he's elite by any measure.
Right.
So it depends what you want.
It's the price,
is he better than George Fant? Yeah, it's the price. It's absolutely the price as well, and it depends on how many years he wants. I mean, he's just turned 30, so is he going to be looking for his final multi-year deal before he starts playing on these 1-year contracts? So it's an interesting one. I'm not overly excited about Morgan Moses. I'll just be completely honest. I don't think he's a game changer. I don't think he's going to drastically improve us if he does come. But yeah, I wouldn't be against it, depending on what the
Yeah.
price is. But what are your thoughts?
My thoughts is that I think he would be an upgrade to Fant. I think that Fant is probably a better scheme fit, which increases it kind of bridges the gap in the quality. I still do think he's a better right tackle than Fant overall. And if you were to bring him in, you could have him as the starting right tackle, and Fant would be, your swing tackle could be brought in. It would just give us depth, right? I mean, Mackay and even Moses himself could get injured, and you would have Fant to be able to fill in, and that's a pretty good person to fill in. And I mean, having depth at the offensive line is almost a rarity in the NFL, right? So, in terms of the season, how often do you see, we know the guys who've come in for even for last year from when Mackay was out, was it McDermott? It just there's a massive drop off, and if you were to able at least have one guy who could kind of fill in for either position at the tackle position and not be a massive drop off and do a decent job at least and hold up and keep things ticking, that would be that is actually a really important role. It's almost a six-man role, right? As we go back to the basketball talk, is that kind of that one guy who kind of really can rotate and kind of help fill in the gaps there. So I do agree that I think the Jets fans are big and making him a better player, maybe a better prospect than he is to come to the Jets. But I do think he offers that value from a depth point of view. That it would be really interesting to have the three tackles and have quality there, right?
Yeah, and I think Moses did play at left tackle in a couple of games last year.
Mm.
So I remember that Washington's left tackle getting injured, and he did fill in admirably, probably. I don't watch enough Washington football to know precisely what happened, but just having a quick scan, the fans seem to quite like him. And if it means that we don't have Chuma Adoga playing left tackle in this year, then I'm all for it. I think it does come down to the cost, though. If you're going to spend money. It was quite interesting because in Salah's kind of press conference, they were talking about the cornerback position.
Mm.
Obviously, that's the position that everyone's kind of looking at going, we've still got cap space. Steven Nelson's still out there. Is that the perfect fit? And Salah kind of indicated that he was quite happy with what he's got at cornerback at the minute. And he was just going to give the young guys a chance to show that they could kind of handle that position.
That was before June 1st, though. The comments were made before, and now we're past that. I know we're past that, but things open up, right? Things open up after June 1st, and you go forward, right? In terms of who you sign, in terms of counting against certain, calculations with the compensation, all those different things come into. So I think now that we're past June 1st, we could have some signings come through in the next couple of weeks at any of these positions.
Might be a few cuts going in there as well, isn't there? Post June 1st cuts are quite
exactly. So I think. You could end up. I think right now he's happy to kind of give the guys the time, and the free agents out there who are experienced vets are happy to not be having to deal with OTAs and maybe mandatory minicamp, and then they'll come in. They'll come in for training camp. Maybe or during training camp, and they'll be able to just kind of skip all the stuff they don't want to and join the team. And I think we'll definitely add a vet at that position and. I think we'll also maybe add some depth maybe at the O-line position as well. Whether it's Moses or someone else, we'll probably do it with maybe with a cap from somewhere else.
Yeah, I think Salah's got another press conference today. If the Jets YouTube kind of schedule,
that's correct. That's Friday. Yeah, Friday the 4th. Yeah.
Friday the 4th. So it'll be interesting to see if he gets asked that again, if his opinions changed in the last week. But those press conferences annoy me sometimes. So kind of all the reporters seem to ask the same question just in a different way, and it's usually about Zach Wilson. I know we all want to hear about Zach Wilson, but I kind of want to hear about how some of the other guys are doing.
Yeah, I didn't want to hear about Zach Wilson from Salah anymore because Salah is going to say the same thing. When Mike LaFleur talked for the first time, that we really saw,
that was interesting.
That was different. That was like, I want to hear as much about Zach Wilson as possible. But from Salah, I want to hear what's your position on this and that. And for sure, I think this is interesting, like where Mekhi Becton is, like we haven't, he's been, he doesn't have to turn up. Obviously, it's voluntary at the moment, and he may be with Duke Manyweather down, with his squad down there. So that might be explained. But some people are questioning where Mekhi may be, and maybe if it's an injury situation, or everyone just gets a bit nervous about that.
Wasn't he? He
was there.
Did come up, and he had some practices, and then he's gone.
Yeah.
yeah, he's gone away again.
Yeah,
um,
exactly. So I don't. Maybe he jumped into kind of get acquainted with the rookies with Vera Tucker, and then he thought,
mm,
okay, well now bounce out. Maybe I'll go to, like I said, train with his trainer Duke Manyweather, and then he'll come back for minicamp. That's perfectly fine. I think people were just
yeah,
nervous because he was kind of nicked up throughout the season, and you worry a little
yeah,
bit about a guy that big with his weight, and there's just a lot of concerns. Like we can see the potential for how great he could be. And I think there's just nervousness of like anything that could potentially get in the way of that. So I think they'll
yeah.
be peppering Salah with questions
And
about
teams
that.
don't need to reveal injuries during OTAs, do they? So they don't have to
No,
say anything to the media about if someone's injured or someone's not. I think they did release a little bit on. Was it Corey Davis who had the
yeah,
shoulder?
yeah,
Yeah, so
strange
they
shoulder,
do.
yeah.
They have released that, which makes you think: would they release Becton if if that was the reason? Don't
Yeah,
know. Potentially.
I probably just
Um,
it's just each case, however they feel about it, right? So they
yeah,
would treat it that way. So
maybe he is just working out. He wants to go through
I think
his
it
normal
is.
off-season drills, and yeah, he knows he's got time during mandatory minicamp, and then the whole should
Yeah,
have an entire off-season in terms of training camp to get acquainted with Zach and Vera
I mean
Tucker, and
he did
it's the
pretty
new
well last
system.
year with very limited, right?
Yeah,
So
exactly. Yeah, he wasn't too bad last year. I think the
exactly,
injuries are always going to be a concern, though, aren't they?
yeah,
You know,
for sure.
anytime a rookie comes in, he gets banged up not once but a couple of times and misses game time. You're kind of like, oh, okay. And his weight has been an issue apparently in the past. It does go up and down quite a lot. So, um, yeah, let's hope it's not injury related, but it could be.
Yeah, well, I think it's as I said, we'll know more about these players as we go along. Just to wrap up, one last a bit is obviously we've got that really fun-looking documentary series about the off-season, which we were just hyped about this off-season, how amazing it was, right? And to have a four-part mini docu-series covering, I'm guessing, all the way from the end of the season through to OTAs. I just can't wait. It just looks so exciting and it looks really
21st
more.
of June, is it?
Yeah, 21st of June. It looks much more like they're really diving into like the conversations that they're having, which was a big criticism I had with the only, like I really liked One Jet's Drive, but the one thing I had was like you never really got like the conversations behind the scene. Like you never got a lot of that. And I saw some other teams' productions in the NFL, and they were doing kind of the behind the scenes chat about this player. Like we know we're taking this player because that's history right now. So let's have that conversation about how you got to that decision to trade up
Mm.
for him or to go for that guy. And it looks like they're showing it. So it looks very exciting, and I cannot wait for the 21st of June for sure.
Yeah, that's going to be fantastic. It's gonna be nice to know how the inner workings happen. You kind of get a sense of the relationships in the building. We all saw the excitement, but I think I'm with you. I kind of want to see how they got to that point. How
Hmm.
did they get? Was Vera Tucker, were they always going to trade up? Was it just because he fell to a certain
I think
level?
they previewed it in the little clip that they showed, right? They thought, I mean,
Yeah, I
and
don't, I don't know if I've seen that. I don't know if I've seen.
oh, there's a
Or
recent.
maybe see it a long time ago when they first said it was coming.
Oh, then you need to, and that goes to anyone listening as well. I'm sure most people were like, David, how have you not seen it? There's a clip. Yeah, go on the Jets website on their account, and they posted a clip yesterday, talking about some
Oh,
of
I've
the.
been busy the
Yeah,
last
I
24
know.
hours.
I'm sure. Yeah, definitely go check it out. It's really exciting.
Oh,
I even commented it on our. If you want to just go on our account on Twitter, you can check it out. It looks
what's
really
that
fun.
account, Andre? Just to get a plug in.
Oh, on our account on Twitter, yeah, that's you can follow us on the Jets UK pod on all formats if you want to listen to us on Twitter, Instagram, and Facebook as well. But yeah, on our Twitter feed, we have I made a little comment about how good the series looks, and it's just got like a little clip about a little bit of conversation
I
about
got it.
he's really good. Will he make it to 23? And they're like, no, 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 he won't make it to 23. And they're like, we're gonna have to trade up to get him. And then, so it looks like it's about talking about Vera Tucker. So
Oh,
very,
amazing.
very exciting times. But I think with that, we'll head over to our first roster battle. Okay, so for our first roster battle that we're going to talk about is the right guard position. So, the people, obviously, right now, it's in pencil that Greg Van Rotten is starting at right guard with Vera Tucker at left guard. So that right guard position is probably the one you look at that potentially could be open. People competing with Van Rotten for that is Alex Lewis, who's now obviously been kind of re-signed, restructured his deal, and took a pay cut basically to stay. It was one of those ones where like, you're going to take less money. What happens if I don't? then you cut. Okay, I'll take less money. So I think that's Alex Lewis, and then you got Dan Feeney, and Corey Livin and Tristan Hodge, and I guess you can throw in Conor McDermott, even though he played a lot of left tackle last year. He has got history at playing guard as well. So, I mean, who's the main guy? Do you think, realistically, how likely do you think Greg Van Rossum will kind of lock that position? Now, this is not saying any signings, obviously, just as it is. How likely do you think he'll get the job, and who's his main kind of challenger for the position?
Yes, I think it's a tough one. Because I think Alex Lewis is definitely his main competitor for the job. I mean, Van Roten's he's not a bad pass protector. He's quite a good pass blocker. I mean, his numbers from last year are decent as a pass blocker. He's just an awful run blocker. So he doesn't move people off the ball very well. But, he's £300. He does move okay. So I think Van Roten is probably the leader at the minute. I think Alex Lewis could potentially displace him in training camp. It's going to be interesting to see if any of the others can kind of step forward, and like we're talking Tristan Hodge and obviously Cameron Clark, who we all wanted to see last year.
Of course,
he kind of had a red shirt season, didn't he, last year?
Didn't even mention him at the beginning of the part. Yeah, so Cameron Clark's also in there for sure. Yeah,
a 4th round pick who, even though we got awful offensive line play, just wasn't considered for a start last year. I don't know if Adam Gase was ever asked. I seem to remember him being asked about Cameron Clark and him just saying he's just not ready, and he didn't want to throw him in because I guess he did come from Charlotte, so he didn't come from a major college program. He's got great physical tools, but no one's really seen him play football. Cause I don't know about you, but I didn't see a lot of Cameron Clark at Charlotte. Just being completely honest.
I mean, he had a good tape against Clemson. He had a really, really good game against Clemson the year before, and so it would have been cool to see him. Obviously, if we had the preseason games, we would have seen him. We would have had some tape of him out there, but we didn't get to see that. So people like him, we kind of lost out a little bit because of last year, So hopefully, with the preseason now, coming back, we'll be able to check these guys out, right? These guys at the back of the roster fighting for those spaces, and even the ones challenging for this kind of weaker position, this weaker starting position. So, Cameron Clark is a guy who, he's very exciting in terms of the tools he has, and let's see if he can put it together, in the NFL. So that's definitely a guy to look out for. Dan Feeney, a fan favorite already, right?
The mullet man,
magical mullet man, and he comes with a reputation of being a very nice guy and a very poor player for NFL standards. So, what do you think is his kind of right now, some people pencil him as maybe a backup behind, kind of as a guy who's going to be a backup in either position and not really a starting guy. What's your feelings on Dan Feeney?
I mean, Dan Feeney.
That side tells me everything. Yeah,
it's kind of when we selected him, I was kind of, when we signed him, I was kind of, why have we signed Dan Feeney?
Locker room guy, right?
He seems like a nice guy. He's obviously. That video of him at the Islanders game smashing a beer on his head, that's going to enamor himself to some fans, which is good. I like those kind of guys. He has a lot of energy. He seems like a good guy, but I mean, his numbers are pretty poor, and that's putting it kind of mildly. I was just looking at his 2020 season, and kind of I think PFF had his pass blocking at 51, his run blocking at 47, 33 pressures. 5 hits, 4 sacks, a couple of penalties.
It's bad.
He did play a centre last year.
Yeah, he got abused by, I think it was it Quinnen or John Franklin Myers or somebody someone put a clip of like 3 or 4 plays where he just got, and back-to-back plays where he got absolutely destroyed by some of our D linemen. But I think Feeney is a guy who is going to be, he can fill in, but you don't really want to see him putting any significant minutes in there. He was one of the weak spots of a line that was worse than even ours last year.
And what I did, I went back to 2019, because I looked at 2020 and I was kind of like, okay, he played out of position, he was playing centre, maybe he wasn't comfortable there. Let's go back to 2019 and see kind of if it was any better. And it was worse. So
great.
It's 43 pressures, 8 hits, 5 sacks, and 7 penalties. Which the penalties actually bothered me a little bit more than the the sacks or the pressures.
Mm.
The fact that he had 7 penalties, and it tends to be when they pick up penalties, it's usually a holding penalty, and it's usually because they've got beaten off the ball, and it's usually because their quarterback's in danger. So it doesn't fill me with a massive amount of confidence that he's going to do anything for the Jets this year. I mean, he might be a great locker room guy, but they gave him 3.5 million, so 3 million of it guaranteed. So I'd imagine he will be on the roster.
Yeah, for sure.
As a
Yeah.
backup, versatile guy. He can obviously play at centre. He can play at left guard. He can play at right guard. I'm not sure if he's ever played tackle, but
Mm.
that interior flexibility is a good thing. So
Yeah, it's a guy who can hold the fort and keep things progressing. Hopefully, some level. I don't know. It's like it's hard to when you see the stats that bad, you kind of go, is he a guy that you even want? Then it's a bad situation if he's in for any amount of minutes and something. There's been injuries one way or another, or someone's not kind of living up to any. If he's there, then something's wrong, right? So, I don't think the upside's there for him, but he's a good. He's a guy who can kind of help out in spots, hopefully, and be a bit better. Hopefully, with this, they can kind of unearth some ability that he wasn't showing at with the Chargers. But another guy, Corey Livin, obviously he played with the Titans most recently. I saw some decent play from him coming in. What's what we're seeing with Corey Livin in his stats and coming in and as a guy who could potentially be some backup or maybe even challenge for that right guard position?
yeah, he's bounced around a little bit, hasn't he? He's kind of what's he on 1, 2, 3, 4, fifth team now, and he only got drafted in 2017, which is always a little bit of a red flag when you've kind of you've bounced around to 5
more teams in
and,
years, more teams in years, yeah.
Exactly, yeah, and obviously he had no tape from last year. I mean, I'm not actually sure the last time he started a game because he's only got one start in his entire NFL career, and I've got a feeling it might have been back in around 2017, 2018, somewhere around there. So, I don't
just
really
depth,
know.
right?
I don't know a massive amount about Corey because I haven't seen a massive amount from him, or I can try and find the stats because he hasn't played very much. The stats aren't really telling either.
They're not popping up for you, yeah. When
No, and he's kind of in a Dan Feeney mold. He's a guard and a center, so he kind of has that flexibility, and that's maybe what the Jets were looking for when they signed him. I don't actually think he'll probably make the roster. I think he might get cut during training camp, which then he'll be on his 6th team in 4 years, so that'll be quite fun. At least he's getting to see plenty of the country because he's kind of he's been down in Tennessee, he's been over in Denver, he's been up in New England, and he's been in Chicago as well. So he's getting to see a lot of the country. So let's put it at that. He's born in Georgia, so he's a southern boy.
Okay, it's not bad being able to get around and
exactly.
explore the world. Yeah, explore
he's got some air miles.
Yeah, it's not the worst thing. Obviously, it's I'm sure he would want more success in his career, but it's quite fun to kind of get to different teams and get to know different teammates. But I don't think he's going to be, too much use for us. He's going to be obviously a bit of a camp body guy who's going to help out with, and we'll see maybe some depth. Maybe I don't, but I think you're right. He may not make the roster. Now, a guy that we both are very fond of, and we have big, hopes that he would suddenly blossom and become the guy and take over the role, and that's Tristan Hodge, the unrestricted free agent, the undrafted free agent, from BYU. What's the likelihood that he kind of makes the roster, the practice squad? Does he have a shot at starting? I mean, probably not, but maybe not stay away. What's your thoughts about Tristan Hodge in the season and where he lands?
Yeah, I mean, I quite like Tristan Hodge. He's got that benefit of having played at BYU with Zach Wilson, so he knows him really, really well. They also ran the exact same system that we were going to run, or at least very similar in terms of the running style. So he does have a little bit of experience there. He was really highly recruited, and we keep saying it, he's highly recruited. He went to Notre Dame and kind of just doesn't work out for him. Then he switched over to BYU. He had a few issues last year. He did get COVID and he had a couple of injury issues. But he just seemed to, when you watch tape of him, he does perform. He does seem to be like Wilson was. He is a level above a lot of the competition he was playing. So I was really surprised that he went undrafted. I'll be completely honest. I didn't think he'd get drafted highly because he had injury issues, and he didn't put that dominant kind of performances, that can instantly translate and make you go, he is definitely going to be a starter. But I've seen some interviews with him. He seems like a really funny guy. His dad's hilarious because his dad. Have you seen all the stuff his dad
Yeah.
posts on? It's fantastic. Like, it's really good entertainment. Obviously, he's not going to make the team just for that.
No.
But this is kind of where I get a little bit frustrated with those news conferences, because we only see the clips that they put out, so we're relying on the guys asking the right questions. So I mean, I listened to them, and I don't think at any point have they said, "Are there any undrafted free agents that have really caught your attention this early?" Or how is this guy getting on? Or so it's really hard for us to sit here and say it, because if we were in those news conferences, we could say, you've obviously brought in 11, 12 undrafted free agents. Who's caught your eye? Who's stepping up? Who do you think's going to keep your eye on in camp?
Yeah, exactly. Those are the questions you want to hear, and they don't really they really stick on the kind of starters, and why is this starter not playing, or why is he not in OTAs, and it's kind of like, it's fair enough. These are the kind of questions that a lot of the readership want to know, right? But you wish that they could maybe also throw in a few questions about, just generally like an open question, like you just said, like out of the undrafted guys, who's particularly stepping up, or I think that's something that could be said. But hopefully we'll be able to see ourselves a little bit when they get into preseason and in training camp. We'll be able to see a little bit more for ourselves, who's stepping up. But yeah, I think Tristan Hodges
might send DJ a message on Twitter and just say, "Can you ask this question to Salah later on today?" And
I mean, it should be able to, because they're early right now. So yeah, I think that's a good one. Yeah, send the guys, see if we can reach out to him or to Connor, someone, and just ask about them. Because it'll be an interesting question to see who the coaches feel that, and who they say will come out and say, and they're comfortable coming saying, yeah, this person's doing really well, and single them out, right? That would be an interesting kind of comment. I think a lot of people will be very interested with, especially with some of the guys that we're really actually hopeful that can make a noise from this undrafted lot. So I think for sure, then this right guard position is interesting. I don't think the Morgan Moses thing changes it too much. I think it's more, that will be more tackle depth. So I think we're looking at a Van Rotten, Alex Lewis, Cameron Clark kind of situation right now, in terms of who could potentially with the role. Obviously Tristan Hodge maybe as well as the kind of dark horse there.
I think it's those four. I do think it's those four. It'll come from there. Yeah. Most likely it's going to be Van Roten or Alex Lewis. I'd probably say Van Roten probably got the inside edge right now.
Yeah.
Cam Clark is just a great mystery, and Tristan Hodge it's like you said, I think he's the dark horse. Not saying he's going to start, but I think it would be a success if he made the roster or if he made the practice squad. So we'll see how he goes with that. But it's going to be a really interesting battle, because obviously Vera Tucker, we all thought that Alex Lewis was going to get cut. As soon as we made that, because he was making so much money, we were kind of like, oh, Alex Lewis is gone. So that right guard spot is Van Roten, and it's Cam Clark, and it's Tristan Hodge. But now you put Alex Lewis in there, and it muddies the water a little bit.
Yeah.
So yeah, it's going to be really interesting.
Yeah, so we'll see. I mean, we're all hopefully that this line keeps Zach upright and create holes in the running game for Michael Carter and the running backs. And I think that right guard position, they always say you're as weak as your weakest part, right? Or you're only as strong as your weakest part. Hopefully the right guard position can be improved, and there can be a good battle there that's going to create a good starter, a decent starter at least at the position, and maybe some way we can upgrade down the line, but it could be a decent job for now. So that's our first roster battle wrap up, and we'll head over to a little bit of questions. Okay, so for some listener questions, we've got Olivia has sent us some questions. That's our friend Olivia. She's got a few questions here, so we'll go through them one by one. David, she asked for a hot take for the AFC East. It doesn't have to be Jets, but maybe still relevant. What's one you got there for the AFC East?
I don't think Josh Allen's going to be as good this year as he was last year. I think he's going to take quite a sizable step back. I don't want to put stats on it, but I saw some advanced metrics that said his interception rate
Yeah.
ridiculously like fortunate this year, in that
He had loads of intercepted, like worthy passes that weren't, and you've got to
yeah,
expect that to come back to the mean, right? It's got to
because he does
regress.
take chances, and
Yeah.
he will always take chances. He always
Mm.
has taken chances. So I think Josh Allen's stat line, I don't think he'll probably hit that stat. I don't think he'll come close to hitting that stat line. I mean, he was in discussion for MVP, and I just think he'll go back to kind of a top 15 quarterback. He's not going to be
Yeah.
a top 5, top 10 guy.
And if that's the case, where do you see the Bill? I mean, the Bills are still a really good team overall, right, in terms of how well they're built. But where do you see the Bills if he's not an MVP candidate level player, right, in terms of what he was last year? What do you think is where the Bills are going to be? Are they going to still be a Super
I
Bowl
still
potential
think,
team?
yeah, I don't know if they'll be Super Bowl level, but they'll be
Mm.
kind of similar to what they were last year, maybe just slightly worse. I still think they'll win the AFC East.
Right. Yeah.
Defensively they're still very good. They've
Yeah.
still got plenty of offense. Even if he's top 15, if he's the number 11th or number 12th best quarterback,
Mm.
they've got more than enough to kind of get into the playoffs, maybe win a game or two, maybe get to the championship game, but then come unstuck when they meet a really well-rounded team with a top class quarterback, like I don't know, like the Jets or something.
Yeah. And my one is that I think that this is probably a hot. I think the Patriots will finish bottom of the division, and we'll probably finish third. I think that's my hot take. If you're going strictly for hot takes, because I do still see a scenario where they're not, and we are bottom, but I do have a stronger sense than most things that I've just had this kind of feeling like they're going to finish bottom of the division, which is, like I said, quite hot with what we've had with the Patriots for the last few years, and us coming from the season we did last year. So we'll see how things roll on from there. So next question, Olivia, for us was, what would consist as a good season for Wilson?
More touchdowns than interceptions. It
Oh,
would be a nice
yeah.
start.
I think a stat
Um,
line. I saw some. I've seen some really funny stat lines the last few days. Really, really over the top ones. I think everyone's getting excited, and rightly so, in terms of he's doing a good job. I think something like. I think a good season would be maybe he with the 17th. You got to consider another game now. All right, so maybe there'll be extra yardage there. So maybe a good season would be just cracking 4,000 yards, maybe just under, but then something like a 27-11 touchdown interception ratio, 28-11 would be the beginning of what was you consider a good season rather than a kind of okay season. I don't know in terms of what you think about that those kind of numbers.
yeah, that's quite similar to Justin Herbert, isn't it? I mean, Justin Herbert had like a 4,000 yard season,
Yeah,
4,300 yard season, 30 touchdown, 10 interception. So I'm not sure if Zach will be that good.
I
Yeah, I
don't
think you're right. I think
necessarily
he'll be
think it
just
will be.
underneath that. I think it'll be
Yeah,
kind of like 3,600 to 4,000
thousand.
yards, somewhere in there.
That's what I'm
Probably
thinking. Yeah, yeah,
20 to 25 touchdowns I'd go with. I think we'll
mm.
run the ball quite a bit.
Yeah,
So I think we'll score a fair few. He'll move us down the field, but I think the touchdowns could be a little bit lower than some people expect. So, if he let's say he had, I don't know, 21 touchdowns and 6 interceptions or something like that, 7 interceptions. It's more the interceptions that bother me with an early quarterbacks. If he's up at 15 interceptions but throws 20 touchdowns, that makes me a bit nervous.
yeah, yeah, yeah.
But if he's 20 touchdowns and 7-8 interceptions, I think that's fine. I think that would be a very good season for him. And his completion percentage, what are we saying, kind of 60 to 63, 64%, somewhere around there.
Something like that. It doesn't have to be amazing. You just want promise. You want to see him improve throughout the year. Learn from some early mistakes that he might make, and come back and finish off a bit stronger than he began. I think that's what you're looking for.
That's
And
it, isn't it?
yeah,
It's that learning from your mistakes. That's the huge thing with rookie
yeah,
quarterbacks, and
yeah,
that's what turned quite a lot of the fan base against Sam Darnold, was that he kept making the same mistake over and
yeah,
over and over again,
yeah.
and that kind of indicated to you that maybe that was just the player that he was, and he couldn't improve on that. So
Mm,
if Zach makes some early mistakes in weeks 1 to 4, and then he doesn't make the same mistakes in week 15, 16, fantastic. That's great improvement, and that sets you up for year 2.
absolutely. So I think that's anything around those numbers is something you could start to say as a good season, and anything else would be a bonus. I mean, you got to consider the extra game could end up. That's why you say that's where I put it. Maybe cracking 4,000 because he has the extra game to do it. Where he kind of goes from that, say 3.8 to over 4,000 with a 250-yard game or something like that. So nothing too crazy, but I definitely think overall we're going to be quite balanced. We're going to run the ball quite well, and I think if he can just play a role in that right now and just show improvement throughout the year, that's all he has to do. He has to try and not be the hero because I think we're building a decent team around him. A decent offensive line, good weapons, out wide and also in the backfield. So I think play within himself. Don't do too much. Use your teammates, use your talent around you, and kind of going to almost be the point guard this year. Kind of get the ball out and kind of get the ball out to those guys and let them do the damage and kind of. I think just keep it simple and trying to limit the mistakes as much as you can. Really,
you're loving your basketball references today.
That's I know. I'm really back into the basketball thing. I've signed up for League Pass and everything. So yeah, I'm really back into the swing. It's been many years since I've been into basketball, so it's definitely on the mind for sure. And there's nothing much else to do NFL wise. I gotta watch something especially before the Euros start. So. Enjoying the basketball. Anyway, last question from Olivia. Are you concerned about the safety position at all?
No, I don't think
I was interested to read that one. And, it'll be interesting if, Olivia, after you listen to the episode, you comment back on the link on our website, on our Twitter account about the podcast release and just tell us what your thoughts are. Because when I read that, I was like, safety position, I haven't even thought of it as a worry. I'm not saying it's an absolute strength either, like the defensive line, but I haven't thought about it as a worry.
I mean, I'm concerned if we don't re-sign Marcus May.
Well, that's true. Yeah.
I if that situation sours and it gets awkward through training camp and there's a holdout, or that does worry me.
Mm-hmm.
But I think LaMarcus Joyner was a great signing because when he was in Las Vegas, Oakland, wherever he was.
Yeah.
I always get lost with where they are now. He was played as a slot cornerback, and so that wasn't his natural position, and his numbers took an absolute nosedive when he was playing that position. So I think we'll give an opportunity to play more in a traditional safety role.
Yeah.
And I quite like that Joyner Marcus May combo. I think that has the potential to be a very good kind of combination.
Mm.
We haven't got a massive amount of depth behind them. If we play three safety looks, obviously you've got Ashton Davis, but then behind them, so if you're playing three safeties, one gets injured, there isn't a great deal of depth behind him. You've got Bennett Jackson, who I've seen very little of. JT Hassel, seen very little of again.
Yeah.
We had an undrafted guy that I covered on Gangrene Nation called Jordan Peters, who he shows he's got quite a bit of talent about him. So it'll be interesting to see if he sticks or what he's like in camp. So I think the depth potentially, but if LaMarcus Joyner and Marcus May stay healthy, I'm pretty confident with that position. Actually, I think that we'll get good coverage out of them, and with a defensive line, that'll obviously help our secondary a little bit. I mean, cornerback is a much bigger concern, I'd say.
Yeah, for sure. And I think the depth is maybe a worry, and especially if Marcus May doesn't sign. But I don't know. I've got a feeling that he will report. We'll see how it works out. But I do think they'll maybe get something done with him. Kind of. I've got a kind of feeling about that, but it could be completely off. So we'll have to see with that. But I think the last one that we got from the UK and Jets group on Twitter, they were mentioning about what we could see is something that sets us up for ultimate success for next year. So what are the kind of foundations we want to see now, and what do you think we'd have to build on next year to kind of really challenge more dominantly next year?
That's a really good question.
I think the Zach Wilson bit is right. First of all, it's like a solid rookie season for him is a start, right?
Yeah, I think Zach Wilson's obviously the key, but we've kind of covered that with the other question. So I think other than that, you want to see the offensive line gel a little bit. You want to see how the system fits people like Connor McGovern and George Fant if they play, because if they're better this year and if Vera Tucker stays in, Becton staying healthy, I'd love to see him play all 17 games. That would be quite big to set us up. I think the linebacker unit, I think that's a big question mark. So I think we need to improve that.
What is Mosley right now?
Yeah, no one knows what Mosley's going to be.
Is he a guy that you can take next year? Or is he a guy that you're going to look to move on after this year? Right? These are the questions you need answered, and hopefully some of these will be on the positive end. And you probably guessed that these things don't always work out, right? So some of these are going to be, when we look at all the optimism, some of these things aren't going to be quite as good, whether it be injury or performance related to what we want. But I think, I think the offensive line for sure gelling. I think the wide receivers kind of and having that connection with Zach, kind of and like I said, and let him have a good season is one thing. And I think the kind of the linebacker is a big one with the rookies there, and how Jared Davis can he bounce back from kind of a pretty poor start to his career. I think that's going to be a pretty big position. And then next year you're looking at, it's hard to say right now, right? Because you don't know. You think, oh, we're pretty set at this position, and suddenly it's not, and then you go, okay, we need to address that in the offseason. But I think cornerback, and I think whatever we do at cornerback, whether it's we get a signing, a vet, I think some extra depth there, some extra signings probably going to be in order at that position. And I guess maybe, I don't know, it depends on how well we do elsewhere, right? Like, can you afford the luxury of a kind of a complementary running back to kind of a top end running back to pair up with Michael Carter? It's kind of a lot of hypotheticals, and you're kind of seeing where we're at. Sometimes you look at the season, you think we're pretty strong here, and you end up not being. So I think we'll have to see about that as we get closer to the end of the season, really.
Yeah, absolutely. I think like all teams, we're reliant on how well our rookies adapt. So if Hamza does really well as a linebacker, if Sherwood does really well as a linebacker, and Jared Davis has a bounce back, all of a sudden that's not looking too bad.
Yeah.
And then you kind of look at Michael Carter II. He's getting quite good props from OTAs. That's one guy that I have heard has performed quite well. So if he comes in and plays really well, if Bryce Hall makes that step up and all of a sudden looks like a lockdown guy, if Javelin Guidry plays well in extended time as well as he did in his limited time last year, then all of a sudden you're looking good there. There's
like
a lot
Pinnock,
of questions,
right?
isn't there?
There's a Pinnock, I mean, some people actually were pretty confident. I mean, I was hearing, Brett Coleman, who does work on his YouTube channel, and he does a podcast, the Bootleg podcast with EJ Snyder, the kind of draftnik. They're really high on Pinnock, and they're like, oh, Pinnock and Bryce Hall, what else could you ask for? I'm like, well, you're asking for like a fifth round and a sixth round. Was it Pinnock a sixth? No, he was a fifth, right? Or was he a sixth? I can't remember now. But
No, I can't remember, fifth, right. I think.
Okay, so you're looking. So they're kind of, as these guys who are big fans of the kind of the college ball, like, these two guys we're big fans of. But like, are you really going to expect that 2 fifth-round guys are suddenly going to be your actual solid cornerback? I mean, it could work out, right? You never know how.
I guess their argument would be Bryce Hall fell to the fifth because of his injury, but he was actually more a second-round pick.
Yeah.
And Jason Pinnock, I don't really know.
Scheme fit. They say scheme fit, that he fits like that. He has moments that he has to improve, but overall he's a really good scheme fit in terms of like that kind of Seattle like kind of
big
long corner.
Yeah.
So they kind of like him for that position. But
statistically, he was outstanding in college, wasn't he? I mean, he was right up there with some of the best corners in college.
Yeah,
football,
he just let out the big play, right? He had like really good stats in one column and then really pretty poor stats in another. So I think if you can kind of diminish the bad stats and kind of and work on improving those good stats and work on what he does well, you could have a starting safety there. And like I said, if two guys who aren't maybe that shutdown corner, you don't need necessarily 2 shutdown corners in this defense, right? Like if you're getting good pressure up front and you've got guys who can do a decent job on the back end, that without being an amazing job, you don't need Jalen Ramsey or Humphreys back there necessarily, right? So maybe we'll see, but it's very interesting to see that there's hope at almost every position. I think having the cornerback one is a little bit wary, but I think that's just because a lot of young guys and a lot of unproven nature. But there could be some gems there. But we'll have to see about that. But yeah, no, thanks for those questions, guys. And yeah, thank you for listening on this week's show. Yeah, we're going to rotate. When this stuff pops up, we'll definitely jump on. We're going to obviously just take it as it comes. We're not going to try to force out content that's kind of not there, but we want to produce something that's kind of enjoyable to listen. So, we'll obviously keep you updated on a week-to-week basis about that. David, is there anything you want to say to the guys before we head off?
No, just just give us a follow on Twitter. Keep your questions coming in because the questions really help us think of content as well, so we see some through the week. But yeah, otherwise, it's going to be a long off season as we're excited for this new team. So we'll try and bring you some good content when it comes up. But like Andres said, we're not going to force it. If there's nothing to talk about, we'd rather not talk about it.
No, exactly. I mean, we and I think the team have nicely spaced that documentary right in the middle of nothing, right? So I think it's just after. Is it just after mandatory wraps up? So we'll have that to enjoy. It kind of as we wait for training camp. But yeah, and as to echo David, any kind of follows, any comments, any suggestions, that'd be always welcome. Any if you can review. Give us any star rating, any feedback on Apple Podcasts, anything like that. That'd be really, really appreciated. So anyway, guys, thanks for listening, and we'll see you when we see you, I guess.